The conversation continues. I'm Michael Dismuke with... Wow, let me start again. We'll edit this.
You don't have to. You can keep it in. It's okay. Everybody has a moment, right? It's no big deal.
Yeah, you know what? It's okay. This is true. Just so everyone knows, I do this for fun. I really do. I was just talking to my wife today, and she was asking me, how's the Star Trek Adventures thing going? I said, Kai, I played RPG for 30 years and only could share it with like 5 people, and that was the only people who were interested in it. And now all of a sudden I'm playing RPG and I'm part of a community and I get to freelance write, which is super cool. So sometimes I get paid for it. I said, why would I ever complain? Because whether or not, I'm still going to do it. So I'm in a real good space. So you're right. So everyone, if this didn't come out as polished and all that stuff, I really don't care because they're for fun. So Jim, thank you for your forgiveness.
Hey man, we're doing it for the love, right? I mean, more than anything else. So we're here for the fans and we're here for each other. So it's all good. We don't have to be perfect and polished every week. So give yourself a break.
All right. So anyways, I'm Michael Dismuke. I am a blogger on Continuing Missions, which is the #1 fan site for Star Trek Adventures RPG. I'm also privileged to be a freelance writer. I'm on my 9th publication as of the recording of this with Star Trek Adventures, which is totally exciting to be able to see books on the shelf that have my name in it. I show it to everyone. I love it. Jim, introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody. I am Jim Johnson. I'm the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, published by Modiphius Entertainment. And we are here to do part 2 of our Q&A. We opened up the floodgates and said, hey, fans, come ask us some questions. We're going to do a couple chats and answer your questions on the show. And we got some nice feedback. And so we're grateful for the fans for sending these questions in. Of course, we are not the royal we anyway, but I am super gratified and grateful to have this great fan base that supports the game, supports the company, supports the franchise, because Star Trek is love, and clearly all of our fans love the franchise, even if they may not always love the game. But that's why we're here. We're here to talk about Star Trek Adventures in particular and Star Trek. So, Michael, anything else you want to say before we kick into these cues?
Yes, if they don't love the game, then they just haven't played with the right group. Please go ahead and reach out to me and I'll try to schedule time with you if possible. It's really busy, but I do dream of a time where I could run and just game master games with people and then hand over the baton to someone to take it over, because I am so invested in making sure this game doesn't die. People know my story. If you've listened to it before, the worst thing is having a passion for a game and they're not making any more publications for it. So I'll do everything in my limited power to make sure that never happens. But
yeah, well, you've already set the groundwork, right? You've got Continuing Mission, the blog site, and so you got a cadre of people who can create content for that blog forever, right? Especially as Star Trek continues to pump out new shows, new series, new novels, new comics, et cetera, et cetera. I am confident there will be a never-ending stream of Star Trek stuff to create RPG content for.
Yeah, but it's so different when you have a book in your hands. It's officially published. It just makes sense. I mean, I played Marvel TSR easily 25 years past its publication date. Mm-hmm. And I still loved, until I wore them out, the brochures of the gaming modules. And I always hope that if I wear out my core rulebook, which I've already done once, and I'm working on my second one now, that if I need a new one, I could get one printed off a printing press. I don't have to go to eBay. There you go. I hear you. Goal. Well, I'll be triple charged for it,
Fair enough.
All right. So we're back to questions and keeping the fans satisfied. So who is our next question from this week, Jim?
All right. Looks like we've got a question from Wayne. I'm going to say Twitchell. Wayne Twitchell asks, possible Romulan source book, question mark. So we've had I have had a Romulan source book of some sort on the wish list from day one, pretty much right there next to the Klingon source book, Klingon source book, Romulan source book, Cardassian, Ferengi, go down the list of major alien species. There is like again, it's on my wish list. I would love to do some sort of Romulan product of some sort, whether it's a box set or a hardback. I know that Last Unicorn Games did a lovely Romulan box set, Way of Dara, and which I love. I have it. I have a copy of it on my shelf, in fact, and I look at it on a regular basis. Whether we're going to be doing one soon, I can't really speak to. I think part of that is just the nature of the production schedule of the TV shows out there. The Romulans have played a role in Picard season 1 and season 2 to some extent, and there's still a lot of lore that is probably to come. I have no idea what season 3 looks like. We are not read into the scripts. We don't get advance notice of this stuff, so I'm just as excited as the fans are to find out what the heck's going to happen in season 3. I don't know. I have no idea. Is it going to have anything to do with Romulans? Who knows? To date, Lower Decks has avoided Romulans in most of their episodes. So for the most part, right? Yeah, I think. No, maybe. No, I don't think I don't remember.
No, I was getting confused. I was thinking about the Lower Decks Decks episode of Lower Decks, but those were Vulcans, not Romulans.
The Vulcans, yeah.
That's right.
I know, of course, the JJ verse had some Romulan and Reman stuff in there. Of course, we don't have the license to the JJ verse, so that's kind of irrelevant. But I mean, a piece of this is like, I want to do a Romulan supplement of some sort. It's just figuring out what does that look like and where in the production schedule can we fit it, right? I talked last episode about the production schedule. We're already booked into the next 16 months. Where do I find room for this sort of a thing and to do it proper justice? So I'm confident we'll get to a Romulan supplement at some point.
I think we'll see some more Romulan action also in Strange New Worlds, because remember the last episode of Strange New Worlds had Romulans.
Yeah, although it was alternate universe Romulans, and I don't know that there was anything necessarily new there. But I mean, maybe there was. I'll have to go back.
The Romulans are so mysterious. That's the problem. I mean, the thing about the difficulty with writing Romulans is they're so secretive as a society that I think writers are afraid to commit to anything.
Yeah, fair. So in summary, then, Wayne, possible, yeah, and Spock told us there are always possibilities. So we'll call that one good. Let's see. So DT Sketch Buccino. It has a series of questions here. I'm going to start with the fourth one first because we just answered it pretty much. His fourth question was, any other featured species books coming out? Romulan core rule book, ? First of all, Romulan core rule book, not a chance. I don't see us ever doing another species-focused core rule book. I think the Klingons were the singular exception. And I've talked about this ad infinitum on other shows and other interviews. The Klingons are probably the single most recognizable species in Star Trek next to humans and Vulcans. There is you can go learn to speak Klingon. There's a Klingon Language Institute. There is so much stuff out there Klingon that it made total sense to do a Klingon core rule book, not to mention the fact that we broke the Klingon core rule book curse that has been plaguing both Last Unicorn Games and Decipher. So yes, for finally getting a core rule book out there.
I thought you swore to me that one day you'd get a Pakled core rule book out there.
Well, that was just me being facetious.
Every sentence is only 3 words. Like he'd hire the writers and say every sentence has to be no more than 3 words. Write it, go.
Right, exactly. So Romulan core book, not going to happen, but a Romulan supplement of some sort, sure. I think we could probably. I mean, all things being equal, right? Like, who knows what could happen tomorrow with the license? But I think
I do want to say that you could piece together a lot from what's out there. I know that Picard season 2 character pack was the most expansive Romulan write-up we had for basic character building. And then if you piece through, I have the Beta Quadrant source book and a lot of the other books, you can piece together a lot of the mythos. I think the challenge again, because Romulans play big in my campaign. I have a Romulan captain. I have to construct the mythos and I have to create what's reality out of that. And that's kind of the design of the characters, which is super fun. actually, because even if something happens, did it really happen, or was that subterfuge? Did you really meet somebody who was a senator, or was that part of the Romulan subterfuge?
Right.
So I would say, for you, DK and Wayne, who asked about the Romulan source book, is understand, I think they're purposely designed to be mysterious, and that's what freaks out my players. Mm-hmm. If we gave a book with all the answers, that actually might ruin it. That's my opinion. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And then the first part of the question, any other featured species books? I think this harkens back to the conversation we were having in the last episode, where the production schedules and production realities, we're just in a different world now than the industry was in like the 80s and the 90s, when like West End Games could pump out 40 books for Star Wars, and Twilight 2000 could have dozens of 32 to 64 page supplements, soft cover, black and white. Hand-drawn illustrations, that kind of stuff. That's just not where we are as an industry, and that's just not what Modiphius does. We primarily focus on full-blown hardcover, full-color illustrations. Really meatier books, and I just don't think the profit margin on shorter paperbacks is there, and I don't know that there's enough of a fan demand. I think if I had my druthers, if I were to do like a species focused product, like, a thing all about Ferengi or a thing all about the Dominion, I would probably make that a PDF release and then see how they do. And like, if they sell bonkers, then I would say, we sold, X number of these PDFs. We could probably make a print version work. I would probably go that route. But I think that's just an argument for PDFs, because PDFs can go to market so much faster, and they aren't quite as cost prohibitive to create, because we don't have to worry about print or distribution on those. You basically just make the thing, pay the writers and the layout people and the design staff to put it together, and then you're done. So TBD on more species specific products. We haven't really done. I think really actually the core rule book, or the Klingon core, was the unique species focused book that we've done. Looking at the shelf here, like the Quadrant books, we folded in a handful of species, like 3 to 6 pages, 3 to 8 pages for them, which I thought was pretty good coverage. Especially because and this also harkens to that conversation in the last episode. Modiphius for the Star Trek game line has been careful not to create too much stuff out of whole cloth that might get contradicted by a future episode or something, right? We adhere fairly close to canon and a little bit of secondary canon, and avoid creating too much stuff, because we don't want to go too far afield and have players and game masters feel constrained by the stuff we made up, because a lot of folks will say, oh, well, that's what Modiphius says, so that's canon now. And it's like, well, no, it's not really canon. We want you to play with it. We want you to play with it just as much as we did. So we'll see how that all shakes out. Michael, any thoughts on that? I've been rambling a lot here.
No, that's good. I mean, I again, everyone has their favorite species. I love Ferengis and Cardassians, but again, I enjoy that the fact for RPG is that I can go ahead and create what I want out of them. And maybe a TV show will contradict it at some point. But if you game mastering as long as I have, you're like, oh, no, that's their divergent reality. I'm in the alpha canon, no matter what anyone says. So I just really like game masters, enjoy your game. Do what, if you were the writer, do what you want to do. And if the core rule book isn't out there that you want, write it. You can always post it up on continuing missions, and we'll be happy to post it and share your ideas. But unfortunately, commercialism does dictate what we can do, right?
Yep. And on that note, his another question is: any chance we might see something like a Star Trek Adventures Bestiary? This is conceptually in my head. It's similar to the question we had last time from David about he'd like to see. David wanted to see a book of equipment and gear, and now DT Sketch Buccino, like what wants to see a Star Trek Bestiary, the equivalent of a Star Trek Monster Manual. I think I see the argument for such a book, but I'm going to give the same answer I gave last time and say, like, I would rather do a thematic book that was focused on a specific era of play or a specific region of space or a specific thing, and then fold in creatures and monsters and beasts that were relevant to that, and make it all like a thematically narrative package, as opposed to providing a monster manual of a whole bunch of creatures just to throw at you that you can throw at your players and your player characters. That's just my personal preference.
I always wonder. I'm wondering when people ask these questions. I gotta ask this, like, if someone asks for a bestiary or someone asks for a CRB, for a particular species or gear and equipment, it's like, in a year, would you even be able to get through it all? My pace of role playing would take me 30 years to get through a bestiary book. Because not every story is going to have a monster right in it. So I always wonder about that step. And there's a lot of things you can find online, like a continuing missions. We have a whole generator for beasts, Cosmosian beasts, Cosmozoan beasts, and beasts of the galaxy and stuff like that. So entire book is cool to have, but it's not, I don't know if it would necessarily be something that's super useful every week when you're playing,
Yeah, and that's the challenge. And like, I know we were able to fit in a bunch of new creatures into the Shackleton book. We dropped a few into the Discovery book that were thematically oriented toward Discovery. We had the Gormagander and the I just drew a blank. The tardigrade in there. Yeah, TBD. Actually, Michael, you raised a great point. I'm harkening back to my old D&D days, where at one point I had the monster manual. I had the monster manual too. I had the Fiend Folio. I had whatever the other monster books were. It's like I had these 5 or 6 monster books. It's like, other than the core 15 to 20 monsters, I didn't really go into like the really more esoteric, interesting creatures. And it's like, okay, I had all these books on my shelf and just never used them. And I think one of the best ideas that D&D had, not to get on too much of a tangent, was second edition, when they had the you could buy a 3-ring binder that had a bunch of creatures in it, but it was like a big honking like 3-inch ring binder in there. And then you could buy supplemental packs that were already hole punched. So like if you wanted to buy the Dark Sun supplement, it was like 60 pages, and you just drop that into your binder, and it had tabs and all that stuff. I thought that was great because it gave you a chance to build up that binder as you went.
I had the Marvel TSR, every character ever converted. And I was angry because I wanted to have you can't pull every villain out against your characters.
Right.
And the way I write narratively, one villain would be 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And then you're so invested in that person. You're like, well, no, they're going to come back in about 2 issues. So I can't really start a whole new epic with the new villain. Anybody who's been RPG long enough knows that we can't, there's not enough time to play all the stuff that shows up in these books. So yeah, maybe one day I'll get paid to play RPG full time, but until then.
Wouldn't that be nice? Well, to play, not even to run, but just to play. Boy, would that be the dream.
To run. I would run for money. I would be happy to run 2-3 games a day, 5 days a week, if it would sustain my income. I would totally have a ball doing that. But
that would be awesome. I'd love it. So especially if it was Star Trek, I could run Star Trek all day, every day, if I was able to live off of it. That's almost the dream. Okay. Anyway, all right. So next question from DT. Let's see. Any movement on Lower Decks or Prodigy licensing? Can't really say anything about that. I mean, we've expressed interest to Paramount. It's entirely in their wheelhouse. They are the license holders, so it's up to them as to whether they want to give the licenses out or not. You'll know as soon as I can tell you. Like if I get word one way or the other, then I'll be yelling to the rooftops. Although even then, that being said, you gotta time it right. You can't just go out and say, "Oh yeah, we got the Prodigy license," because if you don't have any product to support it, who cares, right? You'll be looking forward to it, but who knows how long it'll wait. And that was the challenge we had when we got Discovery and Picard, right? We announced Discovery and Picard, but we didn't really have any product for a while. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, we got these, and you'll see more products, someday. So we'll see what happens there. Nothing else really to add on that. And then DT, actually, he's got 2 more questions here. Next question: how about a crew book on IDW's new Star Trek series? I'd love to do it. We had Jackson Lansing and Jody Hauser on the show a month or so ago, and they actually Jackson kind of previewed the new Star Trek series for us, gave us a little bit of a tease. Would love to work with them again, and I think it's just a matter of seeing how it shakes out. I think Jackson said that it's It's an ongoing series. It's not a limited series. And like literally, I mean, as of this recording, I think only 2 issues are out.
Right. And they're already, but I do know they're already starting on their second story arc. So that's happening. And then here's a cool anecdote for you. So I'm a member of the Delta Flyers Admirals Club with that's Garrett Wong and Bobby Duncan McDill, Robert Duncan McDill. If anyone hasn't seen this podcast, it's amazing. Everyone knows I'm a Voyager fan, and they go through and they review every single episode of Voyager and give you all this background. It's ultimate geek fest. So anyways, I'm a member of the Admirals Club, and Bobby Duncan, it's Robert Duncan McNeil did not know that his character Tom Paris was written into the Star Trek series. Now he's the helmsman for Cisco, who's the captain thing. And so in an admiral's call, every month we get an admiral's call, we get on the phone with them and talk to them and stuff like that. I actually showed him the comic and he was so thrilled. I thought that was a cool anecdote. So Jackson Lansing, I told Jackson about it. And I was like, by the way, Mr. McNeil is quite impressed that his character's back in there.
Oh, nice.
Star Trek, even it's been a canon, but he was kind of thrilled about that. And so what's funny, Garrett right away asked, he's like, well, where's Harry Kim? And so I asked Jackson, I was like, he's asking where his character is. He's like, oh, well, I'm not going to say anything.
Probably still an ensign somewhere.
Oh, so I thought that's cool. I love how Star Trek Adventures meshes with comics and meshes with these real actors who are doing their thing. So I love this universe.
Yeah. Anyway, so I would love to work with IDW again. I think it's just a matter of being patient because we don't know where the series is going yet. It's way too early to seriously think about a product because it takes us 6 months to a year to prepare a product, whether it's a PDF or a book, right? And that's a year. I mean, 8 to 10 issues will be out in that frame, and we'll already our manuscript will already be months behind by the time it came out. And so I'd rather wait to get more ahead of that. So TBD. But again, I'd love to work with IDW on more stuff in the future. So we'll see what happens there.
Of course, I'm always pushing the limit. So of course, you could ask Jackson for a preview.
Yeah, but I mean, even 6 issues is not enough to put a product together. I mean, we got lucky with year 5 because they were already done with the 24 issue. I mean, we saw the last couple of issues in manuscript format, right? But it was done. It was pretty much a full package deal. It wasn't, early in the series, So we'll see. We'll see. I want to do more, so we'll see what happens. Last question. Excuse me. Last question from DT. Additional division sector books like a Mirror expanded book or something on Section 31. I've talked before that. On my lengthy wish list that Michael teases me about sometimes, my lengthy wish list of products that I want to do. One of them is a mirror universe / time travel / alternate universes type of book. Last Unicorn Games and Decipher both did something along those lines that were both really good. I'd love to add that to Star Trek Adventures somehow. Same thing with Section 31. We've thrown an intelligence sort of book on the wish list, that would involve, the Tal Shiar, the Obsidian Order, Section 31, Starfleet Intelligence, Klingon Intelligence, just like an intelligence source book kind of thing. Again, Last Unicorn Games had the Starfleet Intelligence source book that was pretty well received. It's just a matter of figuring out where does that fit in the schedule. Is there enough demand for an intelligence type of book compared to like an era source book or something else? I don't know. That's just, that's where
I could see that. I could see that book too with a bunch of optional rules having to do with espionage, covert contacts, booby traps, sabotage. I could see all these like random rules for things that mess you up on your mission. That'd be kind of dark and fun.
Yeah, it would be interesting and different. Again, just trying to figure out like what's the priority over that versus something else. I think if we were in the 90s and I was doing, 6 to 12 supplements a year in softback, softback black and white, it'd be a no-brainer. I totally do it somehow. But because the reality of the current industry is so much different, and I have a limited number of full color hardcovers that I can do every year, I got to be way more selective about the big stuff that I push out. So to be determined on both of those ideas. But thanks, DT, for the questions. Really appreciate it. We'll move on to Charles Ash's question. Will there ever be a source book that allows for in-depth campaign information for the Picard era or Star Trek Online. Again, these are both wish list products. I talked about Picard a little bit earlier. We still haven't seen season 3 yet, so we don't know how Picard ends. And this is something that we were going to do a Picard source book, but once we saw the release schedule, we decided to wait because we just didn't know what was going to come out. And the last thing we wanted to do was put a book together that was going to be out of date before it even came out, right? So we're holding off to see what season 3 looks like. And the tricky thing about Picard, though, is like each of the 2 seasons are so different, and like season 2 doesn't really carry the narrative forward much beyond 2499, right? Because they go back in time into an alternate universe, and so it's like, okay, well, that's got nothing to do with the late 24th century going into the 25th century. So it's a little tricky to kind of like figure out how that all fits together. And like, we're not read into the series, so we don't know what the scripts look like for season 3. All I know is anecdotally what we've been hearing about on social media and in the trailers and stuff. It sounds like they're going to continue the narrative into the early 25th century, which is kind of like what a lot of people want. Like what happens after the Dominion War, what happens after Voyager comes home. I think we might get some answers to that, but until we actually see it next year, who knows what that's going to look like. So put a pin in the Picard book, because who knows what that's going to look like. And same thing with Star Trek Online. Like we've got a great relationship with Star Trek Online and Thomas Maroney. We were able to put a lot of Star Trek Online content into Utopia Planitia right here, and right there. So we got some of their ships into the book. It just happened to work out that those ships are also canon now by virtue of Star Trek Online's relationship with Paramount, which is super cool for us and super cool for them. We've discussed the possibility of doing some sort of book for Star Trek Online with Star Trek Online folks, but there's so many moving parts and there's only so much time in the day to do everything. Like, what does that look like? We don't know.
I ask whether or not we can convert Star Trek Online fans into Star Trek Adventure fans. That's my question, because even though online games are okay, the reason I've never been a big video game player is because I feel like I'm in a box where I'm like, actually, I would want to go left here. I don't want to go through that hole because I want to avoid the ghouls. I want to jump on them. I don't want to, I think like that video games have always frustrated me even as a kid, right? Like Duck Hunt even frustrated me. It's like, why am I not bringing a bigger gun, like a shotgun? Why do I have this single shot thing to take a duck out? I would remember being a kid thinking like that. So I'm trying to see if we can get Star Trek Online players with the awareness of Utopia Planitia to start coming to play Star Trek Adventures to see what a free-form game it is. I don't know if you're seeing any kind of results from Utopia Planitia or hubbub about that. It's been out for 2 months now, 3 months?
Yeah, but honestly, the print books are just hitting America now. As of this recording in early December, the books are finally getting out into distribution and the pre-orders are getting out there. So I think we'll start hearing more conversations about it here in the coming weeks and months. Whether there's enough crossover between Star Trek Online and Star Trek Adventures, I just don't know. I don't know if your hardcore computer gamers that are into Star Trek Online would translate over to a pen and paper tabletop RPG, even if it's virtual tabletop, right? It's such a different experience. I mean, it's all related, but I don't know what the Venn diagram looks like. And I would love to find out, but I don't know yet. It's
obvious. I mean, I'm going to risk and say time's not the issue. I know some of these people who play Star Trek Online and they're on there 9 hours a day. So why not just play 3 hours a weekend of Star Trek Adventures? I think it's just maybe not knowing what it's like, and the younger generation who didn't grow up around tabletop RPG may not know. But to me, it's like, I know Thomas Maroney is he likes Star Trek Adventures. He's played the game. So who's the art director for Star Trek Online. So I'm hoping to see that we see some sort of cross-pollination with those two.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. All right. So thanks, Charles. Appreciate your question. Next question is from Fausto Mayandy. I apologize for the pronunciation there. Probably butchered it, but my apologies, Fausto. Their question is source book for Enterprise era. I highlighted this in the previous episode with Matt Day's question about Enterprise. I know that Enterprise has kind of been the laggard here in Star Trek Adventures. We just haven't gotten to a lot of robust material for it. We've done a mission brief pack, we've done a crew pack, we've done a couple standalone adventures. We've sprinkled in enterprise content into a couple of our different products, including the beta book and the discovery book, and I think a couple others. Would like to do more. I would certainly like to do Era Source books involving enterprise and discovery and original series, et cetera, just haven't gotten to it, and trying to think of creative ways to do that. I've got some ideas. You may see some products next year that might touch on that, but as far as like a full-blown enterprise book, I don't know what that looks like. I'm not sure we would actually do series specific books, although I mean, to a certain extent you could almost say that the Gamma Quadrant book is DS9 and the Delta Quadrant book is Voyager, but I mean that's just by virtue of the series that were involved. But I don't know that we'll do like a original series book or a next gen book or a DS9 book. I think it would be, in my opinion, better to do the Era and have all those different things sprinkled in and provide the connective tissue that pulls them all together. But we'll see. Again, enterprise book definitely on the wish list, and it's just a matter of do I have the time and ability to check them off? So we'll see how that goes. Next question is from Pavel Dabrowski. What about Klingons? Do you plan to do new content for them? Well, great thing about the Klingons is we've got this big old honking 400-page core rule book that's all about the Klingons. And if that's not enough, we recently brought out the Discovery Season 1 and 2 campaign guide, which brought in all the Klingon stuff that we got from Discovery. So between the Klingon core rule book and that Discovery supplement, that's pretty much everything Klingon that we've seen in the franchise, to be honest, except for little bits and pieces like that were in Lower Decks or in a couple of the movies. But I think all especially the movies, right? The Klingons are in the core book. We got Kruge and some of the main characters from the movies in there, all the space frames, all that stuff. So what you can expect for Klingons, I think, would be more standalone adventures, maybe some mission brief packs, that kind of stuff.
I want to talk about something. This is a little side venture, but the Discover book, as I keep going through the Discovery campaign, anyone who's been watching this knows Discovery was not my favorite show at first. Mm-hmm. And I actually started liking it more after I got my Star Trek Adventures Discovery book. And I was like, oh, I get it now. But there's something in there regarding Klingons that really fascinates me. And I forget where it was mentioned. I can't believe now I'm losing track if I was listening to someone else's podcast or whether we talked about it. I can't remember. But the vessels that are designed in the Discovery book for the Klingons are basically old Herc equipment. Mm-hmm. Short of it is the Herc is who the Klingons defeated in order to start their empire 1,500 years ago, or in our 1500s or something. Those stories alone about those ships, and if Klingons could still find some of those ships, even in the modern era, 24th century, same modern era, it's a whole story waiting to be written. Like I'm dying now to play a Klingon campaign on those type of ships. So I just want to say that I believe the Discovery book is actually the supplement to the Klingon core rule book. If you really look at all the content that's in there, there's a lot of meat that could be used as a supplement as new content.
Yeah. I mean, the space frames and the Choha rules and some of the other bits and pieces that we threw into there as well. Yeah. I think Klingons I think are in good shape. I think we do have some more supplements. I mean, not supplements, but standalones coming out. And I think I've got a mission brief pack in the works, maybe one or two. I don't remember. I'll have a look at my schedule. And then beyond that, like weirdly, Discovery, Lower Decks, and Picard have all been pretty quiet on what's going on with the Klingons. After Voyager comes back after the Dominion War, and that just seems like a weird.
Yes,
it seems like a weird choice by the production teams to not really even throw a one-liner, throwaway reference to like where the Klingons in the 32nd century.
Right. They weren't standing around the table. Like there's Ferengis, there's Cardassians, there's Bajorans, but there's no Klingons. That was so weird to me. I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, so I don't know. I wonder if they got something really cool in the works that they're just going to drop on us and we're all going to be surprised about, or what. But
maybe the Gorns ate them all.
I don't know. Or maybe the Borg got them all. I don't know. Anyway, so thank you for the question, Pavel. Much appreciated. And we are at the last question now. We've finally come to the end of our Q&A. We got a question from Patton Bow. I'm going to assume it's Bow. Apologies. Maybe Bo. Yeah. Apologies if we butchered your name. It certainly was not intentional. We got could we /I please get a few mission briefs with the Borg in it? I'm dying to introduce the Borg to my table, but not in an apocalyptic fashion. I want to stop right there for a second. You're talking about the Borg.
Exactly.
Okay? How can you not introduce the Borg to your game and not have them be apocalyptic? Like, take a look at
I guess he wants that.
The Delta Quadrant book, man. The Borg should terrify you. Like, harken back to it's not so much the Borg it's not the soft Borg that we get in Voyager, right? This is the hardcore, we will destroy you Borg that you see in Next Generation, the first episode of Next Generation. Like, these guys are terrifying. This is like body horror at its worst. They are going to assimilate you and turn you into a drone and add stuff to your body and take your personality away.
I guess he wants that small faction of Borg that absorbed Care Bears, who assimilated Care Bears. They're out there. It's way in the corner of the Delta Quadrant. So you could try to go with those, but Borg are meant to be apocalyptic in fashion.
Right. And so even before I get to the rest of your question, like, first of all, that's my hard stop right there, is like the Borg should be apocalyptic. And if you look at the stats that Aaron and the other writers put together in the Delta Quadrant books, the Borg showing up in your game should terrify your players. They should not be looking to negotiate with the Borg or trying to understand the Borg or trying to, do a first contact negotiation kind of thing with them. They should be like turning tail and getting the heck out of Dodge, because you do not want to mess with the Borg. They will destroy you. They will mess you up.
Which proves my point that Captain Catherine Janeway is the best and baddest captain ever. You just proved my point. She's the only one to negotiate with the Borg.
There you go.
Come on.
There you go. So, but before I go on to the,
just so you know, I know I've been vacillating for a couple of weeks on whether I like Pike or Janeway. You just convinced me why I like Janeway more than Pike. It's going to take a little bit more for me to become a complete Pike fanatic.
Yeah, and to Pike's defense, though, he's only got like 16 episodes, right, compared to the 179 that Janeway has. So we need to give Pike a little bit of time.
Okay, but for right now, in fact, tonight after we're done, in honor of Janeway, I'm going to go back and watch another Voyager episode.
There you go.
Okay.
I have had some pitches come across my desk for Borg mission brief packs, and none of them have really given me that feeling of, yes, this is something unique and different to do with the Borg that we haven't seen before. I think the Borg are a challenge because, like, they've had some really good Borg shows, especially on Voyager and Next Gen specifically. And it's just like, what else do you do with them, right? Because they are meant to be an apocalyptic threat, and it's hard to.
I think you have a better bet if people are submitting stories to submit stories about XBs.
Yeah.
I think XB stories are way more provocative. In fact, we did a riff challenge with Al Spader, me, Jim, and Al Spader, and we came up with a pretty good XB story that was pretty heart-wrenching, if you remember, involving the Sicarians. So I agree. The Borg, no one wants to have a bunch of mission packs about hurricanes, 10 issues of 10 stories about hurricanes destroying stuff. And that's what the Borg are. But 10 stories about XBs might be actually interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then he goes on to, Patton goes on to say, maybe a horror themed mission brief pack. Now, a horror themed mission brief pack, that's a good one. That's a good idea. In fact, I think I've got a couple pitches on my desk that I just have not had time to read yet that are a horror bent. I think, in fact, I got a couple standalones I got to read too, pitches that I got to read. But I think because Star Trek is Star Trek, and I think any genre of fiction would work in Star Trek in some format. I think horror is one of those fiction genres that Star Trek can do well, hasn't always done well, but like there's some great Next Gen and DS9 and Voyager story, and even original series. There are some great Star Trek stories that are horror, like adjacent or outright horror. In fact, I think Alison Seavey or Sybee, I don't know. Sybe? Is it Sybe?
Cybe.
Allison wrote a horror module for the Discovery campaign guide. One of those is pretty scary with the Ba'ul in there, and so I think horror can be done well. So I think I would love to do something horror-ish, and I think I've got a couple potentials. So stay tuned for those.
Yeah, if you look at Continuing Conversations a couple episodes back too, we did a collaboration with Really Dicey, and we talked about not only we talked about episodes of Star Trek that introduce horror themes, thematic themes, because again, it's not gory. The only body horror you get really is with the Borg.
Yeah.
But we actually talked about highlighted episodes that are horror episodes, but then we also give some tips on how to construct that into your games too. So but I would love to see actually a horror theme mission brief pack, because I think space is very scary. And I honestly think that many players aren't scared enough when they're traveling through space. They're like, oh, I said about, we're on the cruise ship, we're, on the Enterprise Galaxy class. It's like, space ain't that nice. You need to have a little respect. So I would love to see that mission brief pack.
Definitely. And then Patton wraps it up by saying lots of super baddies up to no good. Species 8472s and Kethy Breen augments the Borg, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this harkens back to a conversation we had last week where we were saying somebody had a question about what are the supervisors up to? How would you run the supervisors in the modern era? And the challenge back was like, well, how would you? Tell me. You're the game master. How would you do it? And so for this one, like super baddies up to no good, Species 8472s and Kethy Breen augments in the Borg. You've got stats for all of them. Do something with them, right? Like put them in your game. Tell me how your player characters react to them. The Zenkethi and the Zenkethi get wind of the augmentation virus and they use it for their own purposes. And now you've got superpowered Zenkethi. What happens?
It starts simple like this. One of your players or two of your players get stuck on a cave in a planet. In the cave, there's a force field. On the other side of the force field is any one of those characters. and it's all about, is that force field going to go down? And if it does, can you negotiate your way out of this situation? That's the most simply horrific idea I can think if you have trouble coming up with horror games, right?
Species 8472, they steal a time crystal from the Klingons on Boreth. They go back in time to the original series. Your Constitution class ship is suddenly infested by Species 8472. What do you do?
Yeah.
Okay, players have fun. Okay, now what? I mean, I think you've got all the tools here, Patton, for all these superpowered creatures to torment your player characters and your players with. So, we can certainly do standalone adventures, and we can certainly do more supplemental material that could add even more baddies. But I think just in this little section of your question here, I think all the tools are out there in the game available right now. It'd just be your malicious intent to terrorize and torment your players by dropping these into your game in new and creative ways. And this harkens back to a conversation that Michael and I have had plenty of times is and this is getting into the riffs, right? Where you take one product and another product and blend the cool bits together and see what you come up with, right? Like, what happens if the Breen...
What happened if the Borg assimilated the Tribbles?
We've done that one. Come on, we've already done that.
It's still terrifying. It's the most terrifying. Yeah. It's the most terrifying idea to me in the universe.
Yeah.
So I just keep going that way.
If we ever get the Prodigy license, Murph's species gets assimilated. So now you've got a shape-changing, morphing Borg thing that coos, right?
Could Borg ever assimilate founders?
I don't know. Throw it in a game. Let's see what happens.
That's scary. Imagine if imagine if one of those big orbs, the big Borg sphere, crashed into the founder planet.
Oh, man.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. What could the Borg assimilate a Medusan? Right? Like I've been watching a lot of Prodigy recently, so I'm thinking about Zero. Like what if Zero actually they had a Borg episode? So what if Zero actually got assimilated by the Borg? What did the Borg do with this Medusan who can not only be a Medusan and terrorize people when they look at it?
But they failed. They failed. I mean, sorry for the spoiler, but they failed to assimilate. So that's interesting because it's hive mind versus hive mind.
Yeah.
That's an interesting module.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is why we're called Continuing Conversations, because as you can see, myself and Jim can take one thing and one question and go forever. All right, those are some really good questions
Great questions. Thank you, everybody, for sending those in.
Okay, so we're back to our shout outs and gratitude moments. Jim, this has been an amazing episode again. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the brick and mortars. We love them because they stock this beautiful products like Jim is rubbing in my face behind him, which I haven't got yet. He keeps doing it. So Joe Van Ginkel actually shouted out 3 different California brick and mortars: Dice House Games in Fullerton, Brookhouse Hobbies in Garden Grove, and the Realm Games and Comics in Bray, California. I'm going to be driving through there in February. I'm going to try to hit a couple of those at least and just say, like, I shouted you out, even though you don't know who I am.
But if they have one of your products in the store, you can say, but now you know who I am. Can I sign the book for you?
Yeah, I'm actually planning to travel with the products because I want people to sign them like you, Jim. I want people who have the book. I want fans to sign my book. That would make me cry. So I'm going to start carrying my books.
That is probably the one thing I miss the most about not going to conventions anymore, is not getting to have fans sign my book. That is my, like, if I have like one prized possession that's related to Star Trek, it's probably my Star Trek Adventures core rule book that I've been able to get people to sign for the first 3 years I was doing conventions right before COVID hit. I got so many signatures in there. I'm so proud of it, and I'm so gratified to the fans that are always surprised when I say, "Would you sign my book?" And they're like, "What? Why would I sign your book?" It's like, because I'm doing this for you, and you are the fans, and that's why I'm here. So yeah,
you were the first writer I've ever heard say that, and then I was like, I'm doing that from now on. So I've decided it's going to be the player's guide and the game master's guide that I take with me in the tricorder set because it fits in there. And so when I go to conventions, I'm going to ask people to sign those. So we'll see how that works out.
I love it. You're going to be at the convention. You're going to open up that tricorder. You're going to whip those books out. You probably got enough room to put a Sharpie in there too, right?
Totally.
Like a silver Sharpie or a gold Sharpie or something. Yeah.
Well, because the interior of the cover, I think the interior cover of black Sharpie is going to look best.
Oh yeah, you're right, because it's yellow or burgundy. Yep, makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with that. And they could write on, I don't care what, because they could write on the interior pages if I rent out a room. I just, for me, this has been my crown achievement. So thank you, Jim. I'll thank you too. This is one of the best writing. No, it is the best writing assignment I've ever had. I will admit that.
You've got a long, happy future ahead of you, my friend. Yeah, I'm sure you'll find more things to work on.
Okay. All right. Who's your gratitude? Enough of that. Okay.
Yeah, my gratitude. I'm going to echo last week and what you just said. I can't thank the fans enough for this game, for the support that they give to each other and to new fans, and all the great questions that they put in. Just the fact that they were passionate enough to ask questions and to submit them for us to spend an hour here talking about this week and last week. So we've put a couple hours into this now. It's all about the fans. So thank you for all your support in the past and hopefully in the future. Hopefully we will keep you happily fed with more stuff to come. So thank you to all the fans as always and ever. So that is it for me.
All right. Well, we'll all continue the conversation next week. See you again. 2023 promises to be an amazing year for Star Trek Adventures. So we'll see you IDIC.
Live long and prosper. Be safe. Be well. We'll see you next time.